Welcome to Supply Chain Partners TV and podcast, where we discuss innovative solutions delivered by our members at Supply Chain Partners. Our members can help you to build a high-performing business and supply chain. I'm Dr. Sharyn Grant, the founder of Supply Chain Partners. I've worked in the logistics and supply chain management field for over 20 years, and I specialize in strategic supply chain performance management. Let's now introduce you to our member. With us today is Mark Bramich, the General Manager, Global Logistics at Natrio Logistics. Natrio Logistics is a truly global logistics company and freight forwarder with a global reach for import and export by air, sea and road. They provide superior services and bespoke solutions for all forms of commercial freight with ultra-competitive pricing. Welcome, Mark. Thanks for joining us today.
Thanks, Sharyn. It's great to be here.
Today's episode is about achieving a competitive advantage in global logistics. Providing a global logistics service is a massive undertaking and requires helping clients to manage the flow of goods through supply chains, from where goods are being made to where they are being consumed. Natrio Logistics helps clients to facilitate the flow of goods nationally and globally. Mark, why is it important to achieve a competitive advantage in global logistics?
It's a good question, Sharyn, and like most things in a complex world that logistics can be, I like to keep things fairly simple. So at the end of the day, break it down into the two major categories of what anyone moves. In terms of freight, it's either finished goods, as you've mentioned, but also raw materials. So we move a wide variety of both finished product and the raw materials into various countries, obviously Australia, to undergo further manufacturing. So at the end of the day, the cost of the freight, the cost of storing finished product and all raw materials for distributing both of those, it all ends up in the finished price on the shelf, what consumers purchase ultimately. So everyone wants to be competitive. Everyone has competition. I have competition in what I do. So ultimately, it's all coming down to making our customers and their customers, and even maybe their customers through the supply chain, more competitive, giving that advantage to win more business or increase their margins, however they want to cut that. And that's as simple as that.
Thanks, Mark. There are many global supply chain risks and issues that organizations need to address on a daily basis. What are some of the greatest concerns that can prevent an organization from achieving a competitive advantage in global logistics?
Another good question, Sharyn. And again, ultimately, everything boils down to cost in terms of losing or gaining or losing competitive advantage in global logistics. So everything we do and everything we do to help our customers, and our customers through that supply chain, however many levels through, is about dollars and cents. Hopefully not down to cents, but definitely dollars. So we've all lived through the last few years of COVID and the impacts that had on supply chain, on global logistics. Many of us will be aware of a lot of the buzzwords, particularly in America, like supply chain snarls is one that you come across the Americans love to talk about. But essentially, again, I boil that down into a few major things that we monitor daily, and we do. We monitor for all of our customers, not just shipping rates, but the things that are driving shipping rates. So obviously what the carriers are doing in terms of ocean, new capacity, or hopefully new capacity, and that is definitely happening. So through COVID, we were all aware that shipping prices globally, there'd be hardly a trade lane that went unscathed through massive increases. And that was all about supply and demand. There was a huge demand on hard goods. People couldn't spend money on travel, so they went and bought TVs and couches and everything. Those things are manufactured mainly overseas. For us Australians, manufactured in Asia mainly. So they put a huge amount of demand on the ocean carriers, and they were able to make exorbitant profits and still are. So we're looking at things still coming out of COVID where vessel capacity is freeing up on many trade lanes and will continue to as the big ocean carriers inject more vessel capacity. We're also looking at the empty equipment, because it's one thing to get a slot on a vessel, then you've got to go and get the empty to fill that slot. So there's been this huge, and there still is, big problems around the empty equipment in the world being imbalanced or being in the wrong places at the wrong time. So there's pockets where there's too much and then there's not enough. So ultimately we're looking at supply of empty equipment and how that flows. And there's a lot of things around port congestion. It's still happening. It was a big hot topic through COVID. It's probably eased a little bit, but certainly port congestion is a big thing to look at. Probably being driven now, if they say in the US and the UK recently, by union and maritime or stevedoring strikes, disruption through there. So that's continuing. Australia's had all our major ports and stevedores have had industrial action over the last few years. So we can continue to monitor that. Things like weather and geopolitical risks that are happening constantly, and that had nothing to do with COVID before, and we've still lived through that before and after COVID. We're watching those. But the main drivers are, as I said, that we watch in terms of disruptors to supply chain efficiency or costs is around, the amount of vessel space globally in the trade lanes that we look at, but over the world, where the empty equipment is and issues around the empty equipment and the port issues. So congestion at ports caused by supply and demand. Are too many vessels rocking up at a time from what the throughput can handle, or is that caused by labour shortages? COVID was a big issue for labour at ports. That's easing now. Obviously, China's still an issue, but it's easing in most parts. But industrial action continues to happen globally, and the UK suffered in recent times. So those are the main things that we monitor. There's probably a lot of others, but I said otherwise I overcomplicate things. But there's, it gives you an idea of that we definitely look from on behalf of our customers. We've got a good handle on these risk areas. Ultimately, it drives rates, and that's what our customers are concerned about.
Thanks, Mark. Could you please explain the types of clients that Natrio Logistics serves?
Excellent question, Sharyn. Essentially, we're open where we are in our business evolution. We haven't been around for 50 or 60 years like a lot of established forwarders have been. Saying that, we're emerging, and through that, we still have that youthful exuberance to essentially look at most customer types. There's a few that, as we're going through our evolution, and that we probably are preferring not to deal with, but essentially big, small, everything in between, we love to handle it. So, but commercial customers, I do get a lot of inquiry through advertising and marketing that we've been doing so far, from the general public to move a pallet or here, a couple of cartons here, and respectfully decline that. So that's important to know that we exclusively deal with commercial customers. But inside those customer base, we have some that are only moving LCL pallets by air or sea. And the appreciation that we receive from those customers, knowing that the bigger forwarders generally will stay away from them because they're too small. But our view is, from little things, big things can grow. And we have a lot of fun in handling those customers, because a lot of them are just started their business evolution as well. And that makes what we do really enjoyable. And we have that freedom to be able to interact with essentially a whole range of customers. Yes, we prefer FCL, full container loads. I'm sure everybody does. However, we move a lot of LCL, pallets, cartons by air and sea, and it's a growing part of our business. I think FCL was probably where our business started, but we're now really emerging into a lot of our LCL as well, to complement our FCL customers, or starting with a customer who only wants to move a few pallets here and there. But our view is always bigger picture stuff, help those businesses grow, with the view that at some stage they might end up moving 1 million FCLs around the world. Who knows? We don't discriminate essentially generally at this point in time, other than to say that we deal with commercial customers.
Thanks, Mark. I'm keen to discuss how Natrio Logistics has helped its clients. Could you please provide one or two real-life client examples how Natrio Logistics has helped its clients to achieve a competitive advantage in global logistics?
Excellent, Sharyn. No problem. Pleasure. Probably give a couple of ends of the spectrum in terms of an established importer and then an emerging importer-exporter, or established predominantly importer, but doing some export as well in terms of the larger customers. So that business, this importer, is in the agricultural sector, and will probably be moving thousands of containers import a year, predominantly import with some export as well, from all over the world, but predominantly mainly Europe continent from the import lane, some going into New Zealand and then moving some back from New Zealand and moving some product back into other countries, but mainly say Europe. So they approached myself October, November last year, said this is an established importer that's been importing 20 or 30 years and large volumes. So one country in particular, which was Portugal, where they import a lot of product from, they just could not get any space and or empties. I'm not 100% sure whether it was both or it was one, but bottom line is they couldn't get their product into Australia. And they'd heard that through some mutual contacts of ours, that we both know, that I was having some success where others haven't been able to. And the long story short, it's always complicated, never easy, a lot of hard work, a lot of blood, sweat and tears, but through probably from initial inquiry to maybe a month later, I had the first lot of containers on the water. So in the space of that next month, I'd had 3 different shipping lines, probably mainly with one, but a couple of others as well. And we were moving several hundred containers. So it was the appreciation was high, and through that, I've been able to maintain some existing business. They were largely doing CIF or CFR terms, so through their suppliers. And so then they broke that down to FOB and then adding on my freight services. So again, thinking a little bit differently, being used to those Incoterms, doing business for a lot of years that way, it was a time to rethink how to do it. My suggestion was, to get FOB pricing for their product, and I'll handle the freight. That was particularly pleasing story, and we continue to engage with that customer today. They do some work still CIF and CFR, probably the majority of their work, but we're happy to move the volume, which is quite significant for us, still in the FOB. I've actually just picked up, as we speak today, we're loading in the Netherlands as well. So it's our first time for loading in the Netherlands, but we've been bringing product out of Lisbon into all major ports of Australia and into Tasmania, where I'm residing and talking from, since probably late last year, and hopefully continue to. So that's on a bigger end of town, all FCL work, and quite significant for us in terms of volume. And then from a smaller perspective, but equally as exciting, we don't discriminate. Sometimes the smaller stuff, the smaller customers and smaller movements can be more exciting, because we learn a lot, and we're still learning and evolving in terms of our contacts globally and moving things around. So this is a manufacturer and an importer and exporter providing rural merchandise, and they're based in New South Wales, growing at a fair rate. So we started with a couple of inquiries. The National Supply Chain Manager reached out, and we had a chat, and I think her view was too, maybe we're not the right fit, maybe we're too small, I'm not the right fit for you. And as I've said already, that wasn't the case. So we put a few prices up. I think at that stage they were looking at across multiple different forwarders, maybe taking the best price option at that point in time. So we didn't win the first couple, but then we hung in there, as we do, and we like to, and we persist. And from that point in time, which maybe 2 to 3 months ago, we now have FCL, LCL by air and sea in and out of Australia. First container going into Long Beach, USA. Has been a fairly new market for us. So we have our first FCL heading off to Long Beach that we loaded a couple of weeks ago. We've done some significant air freights as well. We've got multiple FCLs coming in from different ports in China, and we're handling all the buying FOB. We're handling all the trucking as well. So bringing from Melbourne Port and doing all the customs clearance, handling the trucking up into New South Wales. Really enjoyable. And I only spoke to the supply chain manager yesterday, and what keeps me motivated in busy times and challenging times, and certainly in days where things might not be going 100% smooth, is the feedback that we get. I think I'd like to say that they're looking to sort of make us their exclusive forwarder and make it simple for them. Reaching out to across multiple forwarders, obviously different time. We've been able to show and prove our ability through a couple of trial shipments to say we can handle FCL, it's bread and butter. Actually got an urgent air freight that we picked up only on Monday to go to a big rural trade fair in Kentucky in the US. We've been having some problems getting done, and we're able to get that job done as well. So really exciting. And again, the language that's been sort of used by the customers, we're not your biggest, we probably never will be. But it doesn't matter to us. It's exciting. It's opening up different relationships and partnerships, and that's what probably that word is what we're all about partnerships, about supply and about customer, about our partners. So and essentially, again, making it easy for them to tap into new markets, unexplored markets. To get an urgent air freight for quite a sizable item to the US, which she's been working on maybe for weeks or months and with no success, and we're able to swing into action, get it there. So hopefully they can find distribution and customers. It's great, and it's what we love to do.
Thanks, Mark. They're excellent examples. What would be a key lesson you have learned that could help your future clients?
It's another good question. All good questions, Sharyn. I think through all of the interactions that we've had since we've sort of starting this business and growing this business, one thing that we've learned with our customers, our partners, is the importance of listening. So really listening from those early conversations and meetings about what their pain points, and sometimes they don't know, you're guiding them to breaking down into where can we add value? Because we've had conversations with potential customers where I haven't felt that we can add value to what they're currently doing. And we're all busy people. I guess we want business, we want customers, but we're really about providing value for people, doing something a bit different. You talk about adding value in the supply chain or giving them competitive advantage in supply chain. I think for both sitting as a customer and a supplier, it's the importance of listening to each other. This is what we need, this is what we can do, and then finding hopefully some common ground through that. So I think we do that quite well when we take the time to listen, to get to know our potential customer, because obviously at the startup point, they are potential. This is how we can assist, add value to what they're doing things better, more efficiently, cheaper. Yes, everything boils down to that dollar. So that's the big thing that I talk about to my team as we go out and speak to people is I can talk a lot. I have no problems in talking, but equally as important, and more important sometimes, is listening. That's the key for us.
Thanks, Mark. They are valuable key lessons. Natrio Logistics has considerable experience helping their clients with their global logistics requirements. Mark, what would you consider to be Natrio Logistics' key strengths in helping its clients to achieve a competitive advantage in global logistics?
Sure, Sharyn. I think as any startup business would, sometimes you don't know you have an idea what your strengths are, but they evolve, and ours certainly have. And with all the marketing that I've been doing recently and will continue to do, and with your assistance, we call it 4 pillars. There's 4 key areas, and we've elaborated on some of them, if not all of them, a little bit in this conversation so far. So vessel space, guaranteed access to vessel space, as I think that's something that we pride ourselves on. We have a couple of key carriers that we use predominantly, so preferred carrier. We have our preferred carrier, and then underneath the preferred carrier, we probably have another 2 or 3 key, and then maybe another 5 to 7 other providers we can tap into if we need. But through that, the first thing that we look to offer our customers is guaranteed space. Now, why is that important? It's been really important through COVID that the people want their product, whether it's finished goods, to go on the shelf, onto the shop floor, or raw materials to go into the factory. They want them moving reliably and at a good pace. So we saw through COVID that lots of businesses went out and acquired more warehousing space to hold more inventory because the risk of running out was obviously lost sales or lost production, which ends up being lost sales. So lost revenue was a common theme through COVID. I'm encouraging our customers not to go down that path. Hasn't been perfect. It never is 100%, but certainly we have a high rate of reliability in accessing the vessel space and weekly sailing. So we say we can guarantee space on every vessel that leaves every port of loading to every port of destination weekly. Sometimes it might be every 10 days, whatever that port pairing is, whether it's some might be every 3 days, every week, every 10 days, but we guarantee space. And that's really important. And definitely mention the empty equipment, because it's one thing to get vessel space. It's no point having the vessel space if you can't get the empty containers to fill the slots or the space. So again, through certainly our key carriers, we have that guarantee, and it's been quite faultless through the last 3 years. We've hardly missed a beat. As I said, nothing's perfect. There's been an odd issue here and there, but certainly it's been the absolute exception rather than the rule. It's something again that we pride ourselves on. So those two have to go hand in hand in our view. You can't have one without the other, or you can, and it's not a recipe for success. Our global presence, which continues to grow, but in a very short period of time, we have established our own offices in several countries, so our own staff, Natrio staff, that work as part of my team. Certainly in a country like China, it's been absolutely critical in terms of our success, and we're winning business because of the fact that we just don't have agents in China. We have our own staff. So to deal with, whether it's irrespective of what terms you're buying, it's FOB, CIF, CFR, we have people on the ground to have those communications in their own language around we control all the bookings here in Australia. We make all the bookings in my team all over the world. In no other country are the bookings placed, but once we know when our customer needs to move, we communicate it, say, from our own staff in China to here, and then they can do all the interaction with the actual supplier, so the factories, all the sellers, the shippers. So that's really key. And in the countries where we don't have staff, we don't have staff in every country, we will call A-grade agents. Probably all say that. I'm sure we say we only have A-grade agents, but we genuinely have affiliated ourselves and partnered ourselves with really good agents in those other countries. And that continues to grow as we take on different trade routes. There's a lot of countries in the world, and there's a lot of ports in the world. So we're not shipping out of every single one of them, and I'd be foolish and lying to say that we are, but we certainly can. We have that capability, and that's the key. So having, and I personally build those relationships myself. So finding and sourcing. And it's predominantly family-run businesses, but family-run businesses that have been in the logistics business for a lot of years. And we have a lot of discussion over Zoom and over Teams, like we're doing now. Get to feel each other. It hasn't been possible to travel, which we'll all do more of in the coming months and years. But certainly, I think that's a big strength that we have. The quality of communication is just paramount to what we do. We all, I'm sure, say that we give the best communication. Well, I guarantee we don't all give the best communication, because we win business based upon that fact that our customers have been let down by their previous forwarders. So it's really important to us, and we continue to do that as we move forward through other countries. And then make clear that we can handle, we do every day of the week, handle customs clearance both at origin and destination for our customers. So part of that whole packaging up, let's call it a door-to-door move. Incoterms we don't call it door-to-door in global shipping, but in domestic shipping we do in Australia. We do a lot of domestic shipping here in Australia. Keep it simple. When think about a door-to-door movement, we have to obviously clear the goods at origin, clear the goods at destination, combine that with all the different forms of the multimodal transport that I've mentioned. I think it's really important. So we're able to handle that as well. And then talk about multimodal. So we can handle all Incoterms. We are handling all Incoterms, and there's quite a few of them, and all forms of intermodal transport. So road, rail, obviously ocean. Now, ocean's the big one, but road and rail we do a lot of. And air freight is really an emerging part of our business as well, probably underneath ocean. Now become our second biggest form of modal transport. Lots of times we're combining an air or a sea freight movement with road and rail. So sometimes you've got 3 forms of intermodal transport in the one booking. So being able to cross over all those four main forms sort of rounds us out with a strength, Sharyn.
Thanks, Mark. Could you please further elaborate about your global reach?
Sure, Sharyn. So when I say that we are a truly global logistics company and freight forwarder, what does it really mean? And again, let's keep it pretty simple. So spoken about through all the different forms of freight and different Incoterms, but essentially we can move import, export in and out of any country, not just Australia. So coming into a country, out of a country, wherever that may be. Full container loads, less than container loads. So over-dimensional cargo or out of gauge. We engage with RORO carriers to move a lot of over-dimensional cargo and move over-dimensional cargo on the ocean carriers as well. So roll on, roll off, I've mentioned, is sort of integrated. It sort of links in with the out of gauge or over-dimensional. However, we also put at times, especially in the domestic market, we put containers on roll-on, roll-off vessels as opposed to container vessels, because sometimes those port pairings, the routing's not available or the capacity's not there for us. So part of what the bespoke solutions that we talk about that we do well, the outside the square thinking, is that we engage with roll-on, roll-off vessels. Bulk shipping is the wider Natrio business is very specialised in bulk. It's not so much for Natrio Global Logistics. We would, if we have any inquiry, we certainly have through our brothers and sisters at Natrio, who in one certain commodity are the largest distributor globally, moving over 1 million tonnes a year of a bulk commodity in bulk vessels into Natrio's bulk sheds. So we have that tie-in if we need. Break bulk, air, sea, road, we've mentioned that, and rail should also mention. So all those forms of multimodal transport. So that applying to any country globally. There's obviously a few that for political reasons that no one can do business with, and we can probably think about who they are. So, but all things being equal, where we can and can't do business, that's what we can do.
Thanks, Mark. Natrio Logistics offers ultra-competitive pricing. Could you please explain how you are able to provide your clients with ultra-competitive pricing?
Thanks for the question, Sharyn. Well, I think, again, I'll have to harp on this a little bit in terms of trying to not overcomplicate things. We're not a household name, admittedly, in freight forwarding, and maybe never will be. Maybe that's not where we want to be. We are winning plenty of business based upon the merit and some of the things, the strengths that I've spoken about and how we go about our business. And part of that, and I think part of the conversation is always about pricing. So we say ultra competitive pricing. What does that really mean? How do we go about that? So we're very fortunate that we're part of the Natrio global business. And through that offers us some nice benefits, and one of those is that we share office space with Natrio in wherever they're based. In Australia, our office is in Collins Street in Melbourne. I'm not paying to have my team sit in expensive office space. It's part of the benefit of the Natrio Global Business Office me to be able to build my business. And so what's that? Why is that relevant? It's about overhead. I don't have an exorbitantly high overhead. I don't have to have offices. Even though we can work from home a lot these days, and my team does certainly, but they do go into the office a lot as well and have that interaction, which is really important. So we have a low overhead base, and through that, when I'm pricing up work, I can be what I think is very competitive. I don't know standard margin of my competitors. I'm only guided by the fact that when I put rates forward, that the reaction is generally that they are ultra competitive, and that's the feedback. I don't think we're too cheap. I think we all have to make money in business. That's why we're here. I have the owners of Natrio to report to through my boss, and have a responsibility to grow this company and to yield a good profit to Natrio, to the owners of Natrio. But I think it's a key advantage, and it's simple. It's not complicated. People can understand the fact that from where we are, through a sharing resource with the Natrio Global business, they're affording us free office space as one example. But that can be a large overhead for businesses to situate their staff. That all has to go into your pricing, ultimately. So we maintain low overhead, and which doesn't diminish the quality of our service at all. I'm currently recruiting more staff, and that's not easy. I think a lot of people, doesn't matter what business you're in, know it's a hard market. But again, being able to recruit people to bring into the business as we're growing is important, but those other overheads around the staff and the quality of staff that I want. But fortunate that I'm not overburdened with that, and that'll keep and continue pricing to be ultra competitive, very competitive for a different word. And I think it's pretty that simple, Sharyn.
Thanks, Mark. Global logistics can get quite complex. How do you help your clients to manage complexity?
That's a very good question, and it's very relevant to conversations I have almost daily. So, and I've said this a few times on our chat today, we shield our customers from that complexity. If it was easy, they'll be doing it themselves. A lot of customers or companies are certainly big enough to do this function themselves. They'd have to have more staff. It's not easy to get that, as I've mentioned just recently. But say if you roll back 3 years, getting labour was easier. Then you can bring stuff. You can bring what we do in house, and companies do as you get to different scale and economies of scale. Some companies do that. They get to a point where their spend on freight logistics, on freight forwarding is significant, and they think we'll do that ourselves. However, I think there's some, lots of companies have learned it's not just that easy. And what I say daily, maybe every second day, certainly regularly to our customers, is when we're having conversations, and I can tell. I like to be open and transparent how we go about things, but I can tell that that complexity is confusing people. Then I get to a point where I say, okay, let's leave it there. You don't need to know all the nitty gritty. You've engaged us to do this for a reason. Let us handle it. So I suppose it's essentially giving a customer as much transparency as they want, and then being comfortable with that, knowing the complexity of the task. And we say that we're bespoke solution specialists. The harder the task, the better. Sometimes I say, oh, do I really want to say that? Because things can be pretty challenging. But I mean, we do thrive in that environment. But we also thrive on the very simple. So A to B is simple. It sounds simple, but it might be A to D via B and C. Often things aren't just going straight lines. So really, the best way we deal with complexity is to keep it simple in our customers' eyes. I think that's how I can sum it up best, Sharyn.
Thanks, Mark. Natrio Logistics definitely provides a comprehensive global logistics service. Well, thank you very much, Mark, for joining us today from Natrio Logistics.
Thank you, Sharyn. Thank you for your time. I hope your audience that have a listen to this and watch this find it useful. It's been a pleasure.
Thanks, Mark. Well, that concludes today's episode about achieving a competitive advantage in global logistics with Natrio Logistics. You will find all of their contact details listed below. So join us again at Supply Chain Partners TV and podcast, where we meet with our expert supplier members to discuss key business and supply chain issues, topics and trends, including logistics, supply chain management, technology, and much more. We invite you to subscribe to this Supply Chain Partners channel, and we look forward to you joining us again in a future episode.